Japan has one of the world's largest economies, providing its citizens with a good standard of living. Underpinning all this is a common belief that consistent hard work produces success, respect, and social harmony. Whilst these are all worthwhile pursuits, often the true cost of acquiring them is high.
Here in Japan, work is everything. Unlike for many of us in many countries where we have social lives outside of work, family activities and long holidays in the summer, here in Japan, businessmen will be on the train 7 o'clock in the morning heading into Tokyo. They'd work all day. Continued economic prosperity has kept them at the relentless pace of growth that they now have, and they can't stop. Japan is a group society where the individual is not important, where the needs of the group, the company, the whole nation are considered most important. That has come partly from the teachings of Confucius, partly from being a large number of people crushed into a small space where they have to work easily together, and they've developed a philosophy that requires them to put their own needs on one side and deal with the major needs of a community.
I'm working in Tokyo, and I'm working for 16 hours in a day, 8 hours in a week. I leave the home at 7 o'clock and leave the office 10 o'clock. If I didn't do all the work of the day, I will do more in another day. And many of my colleagues works on Saturday and Sunday.
Extremely long working hours is not the only daily challenge most Japanese face. Even simple communication at work or in the home can be complicated and exhausting.
All Japanese have two faces, a public face and a very private face. The public face is kind, considerate, polite. The public face at work always says the right things to the boss, always says that it will do what it's been asked to do. The inner self is private, lonely, isolated. There's very few cultural contexts where a person can be open and say what they really feel. They are always guarded about what they say and how they say it. Even within marriage, husbands and wife would guard open disclosure from each other and still second guess how each other's feeling.
The combination of long working hours and the inability to be open and honest puts immense pressure on Japanese families.
Most of fathers are not really involved in parentings, and their children maybe feels very lonely just being with their mothers only.
Japanese family life is lived separately. The husband's social life happens at work and after work in drinking bars. The wife's social life happens centered around the children and education. The husband and wife have very little time to relate with each other, and often you find divorces happening after the husband is retired because they can't live easily together in a small house. Japanese find many different ways to cope with such a stressed lifestyle. Sex outside of marriage is common. Convenience stores sell magazines with contact details and pictures of women for cheap sex. Men, after their work, rather than going home to their families, will go to drinking bars with their work colleagues and drink. Alcohol is consumed in huge amounts both after work and in the home. Japanese women would go out shopping, spending money to try and fill the emptiness in their hearts because their husband's never around.
The constant pressures of long hours and the isolation that many experience when they go home leads to immense stress and depression.
We would have a number of people in church who've been on medication for 10 and 20 years. Serious cases we know have led to people being in hospital 4 or 5 years, and then daycare rehabilitation centres for a number of years. They can't return back into normal social life. They can't return to work life. They're largely unemployable. Each year there are more than 30,000 suicides. Here in Tokyo, that often means jumping in front of a train to commit suicide.
Below Japan's affluent surface, millions lead painful and lonely lives. How can their predicament change?
I think God wants to increase the number of churches in Japan because Japan has a very big economy. There are so many people, but church numbers are still very small.
OMF has a strategy to plant churches across Japan. We so want to create communities that love and care and share the love of God for these people. We want to found new churches in new places so Japanese can feel accepted, loved and cared for by the God who so loves them.
If you believe God has placed Japan on your heart, please contact us. There are many ways we can work together demonstrating God's love to this great nation.